You've been told that inflammation causes pain. That's true. But the part that's often left out, the quiet truth that never makes it into headlines, is how the inflammation begins. And how often it starts with what you eat between meals. Not the big, greasy burger, not the extra-large milkshake, but the small things. The things that look harmless, even healthy. Those crackers labeled multigrain. The granola bar with a smiling hiker on the package. The fruit snacks your grandkids left behind, that you sometimes sneak because they're just fruit, right? They look innocent, but they aren't. Your joints, every single one of them, are held together by soft tissue, cartilage, ligaments, synovial membranes. These are living structures, not lifeless hinges. They're nourished by the nutrients in your bloodstream. They're protected by the anti-inflammatory signals your body sends when it's well fed. And they're damaged, slowly, when your body is forced to respond to the wrong signals. That's what these snacks do. They send the wrong message to your immune system. They create microscopic alarms, tiny sparks of fire in your body's inner tissue, that your brain never feels until those sparks become flame. When you eat highly processed snacks, especially those made with refined carbohydrates and seed oils, you're feeding the exact biological pathway that leads to joint pain. It's called the NF-κB pathway, and it gets activated when your cells sense a kind of internal danger. It's the same pathway that gets triggered by injury or infection, but when food activates it day after day, week after week, your immune system becomes confused. It stops distinguishing between invaders and you. And then, it turns on your joints. That's why your back flares up after sitting too long. Why your knees ache even after a short walk. Why your hips feel tight even after a night's sleep. It's not just aging, it's what you're putting into your bloodstream 3, maybe 4 times a day without thinking. And it's not your fault. You've been taught to trust food labels. You've been taught to choose the low-fat or gluten-free option, thinking you're making a better choice. But those labels often hide high-fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin, soy oil, and artificial sweeteners. All of which fuel inflammation, not because your body is broken, but because your body is doing exactly what it's designed to do, respond to threat. The irony? The threat is what you believed was safe. And that's where everything begins to shift. Because once you see the real source, once you identify the fire starter, you can start to put it out. That's what I want to show you now. Not just the science, but how it plays out in real life. Because this doesn't just happen in theory or textbooks. It happens in the kitchen, in the grocery aisle, and in the quiet hours after dinner, when you reach for a little something to help you wind down. Let me show you what it looks like through someone else's eyes, someone you might recognize in yourself. Picture this. It's 9:30 p.m. The day is winding down. The house is quiet. The dishes are done. The television hums in the background with a show you're half watching. You walk into the kitchen, not out of hunger, not really. More out of habit. A little reward after a long day. Something crunchy, maybe sweet, maybe salty. Your hand reaches for a familiar bag, crackers maybe, or rice cakes with peanut butter, or the so-called healthy pretzels made with sea salt and ancient grains. You tell yourself it's better than cookies, better than chips. You even read the label once. It said low fat or no added sugar. But when you eat it, something subtle happens. Your taste buds light up, just enough to want another, then another. The salt pulls you in, the crunch distracts you, and before you realize it, you've eaten half the bag, still not full, still not satisfied. You go to bed, you sleep, and in the morning you wake up stiff. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, and the first thing you feel isn't the floor. It's pressure in your knees, a dull ache in your low back, maybe a tightness in your neck or shoulders. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice says, it's just aging. But deep down, something feels off. You weren't always like this. You used to get up without hesitation. You could bend, squat, lift. Now your body feels like it's resisting you. The simple act of standing up feels like negotiating with your own skeleton. That's how it begins. Not with a dramatic fall, not with an injury, but with tiny, invisible choices that add up like drops in a bucket. And this doesn't just happen to you. I've seen it in warehouse workers who live on vending machine snacks because they don't get real breaks. I've seen it in office staff who keep a jar of protein bars in their drawer, but skip lunch. I've seen it in retired teachers who care for their grandkids all day and grab whatever is easy while juggling the chaos. They're not lazy. They're not making bad decisions on purpose. They're surviving the way most of us do, by convenience. And convenience food, for all its promises, rarely supports the one system that matters most as we age. The system that keeps us upright, mobile, pain-free. Your joints aren't broken. They're inflamed. And inflammation is not a sentence, it's a signal. One man I worked with in his late 60s had chronic sacroiliac pain for years. He thought it was from an old injury, maybe wear and tear. He'd done all the stretches, tried the injections, even bought a new mattress. Nothing worked long term. But when we looked at his diet, we noticed something. He ate healthy granola every morning, low-fat yogurt midday, and wheat thins at night. Within 2 weeks of removing those snacks, his pain reduced by half. Not gone, but different. Milder. His body responded like a flame given less oxygen. A month later, he was walking more, stretching less, needing fewer meds. He said, "I didn't know food could do that." Most people don't. But once they see the connection, it's like a curtain pulls back. And the question changes from, what can I do for my pain, to what am I doing that's keeping it here? That question, honest, simple, powerful, is the one that can change everything. Let's take a moment now to talk about what happens after that curtain pulls back, and how we begin replacing fear with confidence. You may be thinking, if even the so-called healthy snacks are harmful, what can I eat? And that's a fair question, because the last thing I want is to leave you in fear of food, staring at every label like it's a trap. That's not what healing looks like. Healing is built on clarity, not confusion. It's built on small, confident steps, not guilt or guesswork. So let's take a breath. I want you to imagine something for a moment. You're sitting outside in the early morning. The light is soft. Your hands are wrapped around a warm cup of tea. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, you realize you're not thinking about your back. You're not planning around pain. You're just sitting, calm, still, comfortable. This is not a fantasy. This is what your body is capable of when inflammation isn't ruling the conversation. And it starts with just one choice. Let me give you an example from a woman I once worked with, Jane. She was 62. She'd raised 3 kids, cared for her mother through late-stage dementia, and had finally retired when the back pain hit. It started with a dull ache near her tailbone. Then, it climbed up to her lower back. She tried physical therapy, got some relief, but the pain always came back. Jane was active, kind, thoughtful, and constantly exhausted by her body's complaints. When we talked, I asked her what her afternoons looked like. She smiled and said, "Well, I have my cup of tea and 2 biscuits. Okay, maybe 3. Sometimes I get the gluten-free kind just to be safer." We looked at those biscuits. Processed flour, added sugar, canola oil. Seemed simple, seemed small. But that was her daily ritual. Instead of ripping away her routine, I made a gentle suggestion. What if just for this week you swapped them out? Maybe a slice of avocado on rye toast, or some berries with a sprinkle of cinnamon. She was skeptical, but she did it. The first thing she noticed wasn't pain relief, it was energy. She said, "I didn't crash at 4 p.m. I didn't feel foggy." Then slowly, the stiffness lessened. The ache dulled. The mornings got easier. Her body hadn't been broken, it had been inflamed, and her new choices gave it the silence it needed to heal. That's what food can do. It can fuel the fire, or remove the kindling. You don't have to overhaul your life. You don't have to give up joy or flavor or that comforting moment of a snack in a quiet kitchen. You just need to shift the ingredients behind that moment toward things that speak the language of healing. That's what this channel is here to help you do. Not with judgment, not with shame, but with guidance, compassion, and clarity. Because your body is not the enemy. Your pain is not a punishment. And your food is not just food. It's information. And the more clearly we listen, the more clearly your body responds. Let me leave you now with something to carry into the rest of your day. You don't need to be perfect to heal. You don't need a rigid diet plan, a new app, or a pantry purge. What you need is honesty with yourself, with your habits, with your history. Because the real medicine doesn't come from a bottle. It comes from the small decisions you repeat each day, especially the ones you make when no one's watching. When your back aches and you want comfort. When your knees throb and you want distraction. When you're tired and hungry and reaching for something quick. Those are the moments that matter. Not because they define your worth, but because they shape your biology. Your body listens to what you eat. Not just your stomach, but your immune system, your cartilage, your bones. The soft tissue in your joints is alive, dynamic, and capable of repair, but only when it's not under constant attack from inflammatory foods. You've seen how that attack happens, quietly, through foods you once trusted. But that doesn't mean you have to fear them. It means you're now equipped to choose differently. Start small. Maybe it's switching one evening snack to something real, something whole. Maybe it's reading the back of the box and skipping ingredients you can't pronounce. Maybe it's drinking more water, or adding one anti-inflammatory food to your plate each day. This isn't about restriction. It's about freedom. Freedom from the cycle of pain and frustration. Freedom to move again, to bend again, to get up in the morning and not be ruled by discomfort. And if you're thinking, I've waited too long, you haven't. The human body is remarkably forgiving. Your joints don't need perfection. They need consistency. They need time. They need care. You've given so much of yourself to others, your work, your family, your responsibilities. Now, it's time to give something back to you. Not a sacrifice, a gift. One bite at a time, one choice at a time, one step at a time. You deserve to live in a body that supports you, not one you feel trapped in. You deserve mornings that don't begin with dread, but with hope. You deserve to feel strong, stable, and alive at any age. And I promise you this, when you nourish your body with honesty, patience, and real food, it listens and it heals.